right, Seb, welcome back. Been about a month since your last match. How has the break treated you, and just getting kind of time for the players' rest, recovery, and getting back at it for essentially the second half of the season?
Yeah, it was a well-needed break. Leading up into the break, we had a pretty long time on the road. Going from Boston to Denver to then San Diego. But what was most pleasing is how we ended that period of the season. With two wins, and it's allowed us with the break. Obviously players going on international duty, but to reset, feel re-energized, and go after this next period of the season, feeling confident and ready to go and compete.
As you ended that first half of the season, it was a very long road trip. Now you go right back on the road to start the second half of the season with Angel City, then you have Kansas City. It kind of just starts right back up again. How do you go from this month-long break of resting, recovery, and training to then ramping it back up into games?
Yeah, I mean everyone has a plan. It's a combination of the technical staff, medical staff, and performance staff coming aligned on what we need to do to go out there and perform. And so we've made the right protocols. Players coming back from injury, which has been important. Getting acclimated to the weather now, which has been really hot here in Orlando, even for ourselves who've been here over 10 years. And just getting back to who we are, competing on every level. And so, yeah, obviously players go away on the international duty and buy into, their ways of playing, but getting them back into the way that we want to play and integrating them with the rest of the team has been important. And so, yeah, it doesn't change, the challenges of the league, the travel's always going to be a thing, the competitiveness, regardless of, the changes in management, personnel. You have to face these challenges, face forward, and, it's no different for ourselves. We're going after it. We're not settling for where we are in the table. We want to move up the table, and there's still a lot of games still to be played.
One of the things before the break was that you had so many games, there wasn't enough time to really focus on some of the things that you wanted to in training. Now that you've had this time, what has kind of been the biggest focus for you in terms of getting some of those small, intricate details fixed?
Just the intensity of how we want to play in given moments. We've talked a lot about pressing. I feel the first 12 games of the season we haven't quite looked at ourselves consistently. I think we've had some good moments, but we just want that consistency now to make it difficult for other teams to play against us. We want to be hard to play against, which that's always been our foundation. And we've kind of let ourselves down in certain games. But, yeah, just looking for that consistency of putting teams under pressure, off the ball, affecting them, and then having a bit of, class in possession as well, not just looking direct and putting hopeful balls in, trying to move the ball quickly, trying to switch the point of attack, make better decisions in possession, take high percentage shots. We've obviously had a lot of shots this season, but is there a better chance of scoring with another pass or a cross or another decision making moment? So we've spoken about that. We've started to implement that in training as well, and that's been the challenge with all these games so quickly, is that we haven't been able to train. It's been game, recover, game, and rotations, players getting injured, players coming back from injury. So we're in a good place right now. Obviously we're going to face challenges as the season goes on, but it's next player steps up and take their opportunity on the field.
You mentioned that want of consistency and also the players getting injured and coming back. Having this month off, you've kind of been able to allow some of those players that have had those little knocks and those long-term injuries to have some time to recover. How beneficial is that, just getting those players kind of back into the fold? You had some kind of right at the beginning or right at the end of that first part of the season coming back, but now having that time, how much does it feel like you're just kind of getting a number of players, like new players for the season, essentially?
Yeah, you forget, because you're just so caught up in it during the time. But Yeah, it was nice to get some players some minutes towards that, back end of the first period. Players like Kerry Bello, Zara Chavoshi. We had Jackie at the start, and then unfortunately she got injured, and she managed to get back onto the field. Marty's had a stop and start season as well, so it was nice to get them back in and training with the rest of the team, which is important for us to keep moving in the right direction. But credit to the players who have stepped up, and some have played out of position as well, which is obviously a challenge, a position that they're not too familiar with. But they've stepped up and done their best, and that's all we can ask for. So yeah, it gives us a lot of food for thought when we're looking at selections and players to play in certain positions.
What do you feel like the biggest learning lesson was from that first part of the season for you?
Just consistency. I think our results show that. I think we've got an even amount of wins and losses and a few ties in there, and obviously we would like to turn those losses into wins. And so, yeah, it can't just be one-off performances or two games where we've performed really well, and then there's been a couple of performances where we've let ourselves down. We're just looking for consistency now in our performances and not looking for any excuses. The challenges of travel and midweek games is applicable for everyone. So it's how you face those challenges and not feel sorry for yourself, and go out there and perform to your best of your ability. So yeah, I think we go 15 weeks now without a break, so it's going to be next player steps off, rotations, making sure everyone's ready to go out there and play the Orlando Pride way.
You kind of mentioned just 15 weeks, no breaks. How important is the depth of this team, of having those players that you can trust to be the next player that steps up in those moments, in those roles, and having those kind of versatile players that can play multiple positions and be comfortable in those positions as you head down this long stretch?
Yeah, it's massive. You obviously only get 5 subs, so you can only make 5 changes. So having the versatility with some players is important. We might move them into positions because we feel that's the best fit within this game moment. You have to deal with injuries, you have to deal with fatigue, with the travel, and then obviously the climate here in Orlando is tough. But we go to Utah, you've got the altitude, you've got, turf fields that you have to deal with as well. So, yeah, we're very aware of that, and it's just making sure that once we step over that white line, everyone's ready to go and prepare accordingly to go out there and be the best version of themselves.
A player like Nicole Payne, prime example of kind of training her in a certain position of where you see her as a good fit within the team, starting as a fullback, moving her up the field, getting a goal. How do you kind of go about analyzing players like that, of certain skill sets that they have, where you feel like, they could be better higher up the pitch, or they could be good fit centrally? What's kind of the process through that?
I think it's analysing what you have and then what you don't have at the same time. And in those moments where we selected Nicole to be in a more forward position, it was to give Barbara some support. Barbara's incredibly quick, and it's difficult to support her at times, and with the physicality of Nicole and her pace allows to add another player who's closer to goal, and yeah, she's done extremely well. It's another threat in behind, and so that was our thinking. Obviously she's played a lot of her career at fullback. We have some good fullbacks here in the team. We have some good wingers as well, but we just felt in those moments we needed someone who can be another threat, who defenders have to be aware of when the balls are going in behind, which then can free up other players to get on the ball, to feet and be creative and turn and drive. And so, yeah, we have to analyze everything. And so, in those moments where we've selected Nicole, we've also looked at the opponent and areas that we can really exploit them.
When you go into this game coming up on Friday against Angel City, obviously they've had some big changes over the last couple weeks, or since you last played them, obviously. How much can you really go into the film of the last game you played against them in April, considering they have a new coach, potentially a new system, even new players coming into the team?
Yeah, I mean, like you said, there's a lot of unknowns, isn't there? With new coach coming in, new feelings, new vibes. They're not content on where they are in the league, so they'll be wanting to move up. I think you look at personnel. I think that can tell can tell you a lot of how they play. They have some great athletes in their team. You know, they've got a very quick back line. You know, and when the availability comes out, that can also tell you, you know, how they're going to play. You know, they've got some key personnel missing out in the last couple of games, so that's also important to take into account. They've got some players coming back from injury. So yeah, we'll analyse it when we get the injury report, but also it's a little bit about ourselves, and you know, we've been working hard these last 3 weeks on being back to who we are, and it's going to be great to be tested in LA in front of their own crowd, and yeah, I know everyone's itching to get back onto the field, so we want to really set a tone early on in the game, and hopefully we can see that out until the final whistle and come home with 3 points.
You kind of mentioned just setting a tone. Considering this is the first game back after a month-long break, how important is this game just in terms of setting the tone for the second half of the season?
Yeah, and I think there's different ways of doing that. I think obviously you want to get off to a good start again as everyone gets back into it. And I think there's so many different ways of setting a tone and winning. And yeah, we have to be mindful of, you know, what we have available and implementing the game plan as best as we can. You know, for LA, they'll be wanting to get off to a good start with a new manager and, you know, new players coming to the club as well, and putting on a show for their fans. And it's important that, you know, we don't allow their fans to get involved in the game. You know, it's a very hostile environment when you go to LA, and you really want to quiet them as best we can, and that can be due to, you know, keeping possession, frustrating them defensively, and also taking an early lead. So like I said, there's so many ways to set a tone in a game of football, but ultimately we're going there to win the game.